My brother pretended to be sober, then stole thousands from me. When I confronted him, he accused me of endangering his recovery. I should have known something was wrong when Marcus showed up at my apartment that Tuesday evening looking too good. His hair was freshly cut, his clothes were clean, and most importantly, his eyes were clear. After 3 years of watching my little brother spiral into addiction, seeing him like this should have filled me with joy. Instead, there was something in my gut that whispered caution. "Sarah, you look amazing," he said, wrapping me in a hug that smelled like expensive cologne instead of the usual mix of cigarettes and desperation. "I've missed you so much." I pulled back to look at him properly. The hollowed cheeks were filling out again, the dark circles under his eyes had faded, and his hands weren't shaking. For the first time in years, Marcus looked like the brother I remembered from high school, before everything went wrong. "You really do look good, Marcus," I said, leading him into my small living room in my Koreatown apartment. The evening light filtered through my windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. "How long has it been now?" 4 months clean, he said with what seemed like genuine pride. 4 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days, to be exact. He sat down on my couch, his movements more coordinated than I'd seen them in years. "I've been going to meetings every day, got myself a sponsor, the whole thing." I made us coffee, my hands trembling slightly as I poured. Hope was a dangerous thing in my family. I'd learned that the hard way, watching Marcus promise recovery over and over again, only to find him passed out in his car or showing up at my door at 3 in the morning, begging for money he swore was for food. "I'm proud of you," I said, settling into the chair across from him. And I meant it, even though that voice in my head kept whispering warnings. "Really proud. That means everything to me, Sarah. You know that, right?" His voice cracked slightly, and for a moment, he looked like the scared kid who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. "I know I've put you through hell. I know I've broken promises before." The weight of those broken promises hung heavy between us. The money I'd lent him that went to drugs instead of rent. The nights I'd spent driving around downtown LA looking for him, terrified I'd find him dead in some alley. The family dinners he'd missed, the birthdays, the graduations. 3 years of watching my little brother disappear into something I couldn't save him from. "But this time is different," he continued, leaning forward with an intensity I hadn't seen in years. "I'm different. I'm in a good program, I've got a job lined up, and I'm ready to make things right." "What kind of job?" I asked, trying to keep the skepticism out of my voice. "Construction. It's honest work, good pay, but..." He paused, running his hand through his hair in a gesture that reminded me painfully of our father. "I need to get my own place first. The halfway house is great, but I can't stay there forever, and the job requires me to have a permanent address." There it was, the ask. I'd been waiting for it since he walked through my door. "How much do you need?" I heard myself asking, even though every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to stop. "I know it's a lot to ask," he said quickly, "but I need about $8,000 for the first month's rent, security deposit, and some basic furniture." "I wouldn't ask if I wasn't serious about this, Sarah. I wouldn't put you in this position again if I wasn't absolutely committed to staying clean." $8,000. It was almost everything I had saved, money I'd been putting away for nursing school, working double shifts at the hospital, skipping meals, and living in this tiny apartment when I could have afforded something better. It represented 2 years of sacrifice and careful budgeting. "I'll pay you back as soon as I get my first few paychecks," he promised, reading the hesitation on my face. "With interest. I know money is tight for you too." I looked at him sitting there, his hands steady, his eyes clear, his voice strong and determined. This was the brother I'd been praying would come back to me. This was the Marcus who'd helped me with my homework, who'd walked me to school when I was scared of the older kids, who'd been my best friend before the drugs took him away. "Okay," I whispered, and saw his face light up with relief and gratitude. "Sarah, He started, his voice thick with emotion. "But I need you to promise me something," I interrupted, my voice stronger now. "Promise me that this is real. Promise me that you're not going to disappear again. Because I can't do this anymore, Marcus. I can't keep losing you." He got up and came over to me, taking my hands in his. They were warm and steady, not the cold, shaking hands I'd become used to. "I promise you, on Mom and Dad's graves, that I'm done with that life. This is me getting my life back, and I'm never going to put you through that pain again." The next morning, I went to the bank and withdrew $8,000 from my savings account. The teller, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, looked at me with concern. "That's a lot of cash, honey. You sure about this?" I nodded, though my stomach was churning. It's for my brother. He's getting his life back together. She counted out the bills and handed them to me in a bank envelope. Well, I hope everything works out for both of you. I met Marcus at a coffee shop in Silver Lake, the same place we used to go as kids when Mom would take us for treats after doctor appointments. He was already there when I arrived, drumming his fingers nervously on the table, that same anxious energy he'd had as a child. You didn't have to do this, he said when I handed him the envelope, but his hands were already reaching for it. Yes, I did, I replied, watching him count the money quickly before tucking it into his jacket pocket. Because you're my brother, and I love you. For the next month, things seemed perfect. Marcus texted me regularly, sending photos of job sites and telling me about his work. He invited me to dinner at a nice restaurant in Santa Monica, insisting on paying. He looked healthy, happy, and most importantly, present in a way he hadn't been in years. The job is going great, he told me over pasta and wine. My supervisor says I'm one of the best workers they've had in a while. Says I've got real potential to move up. I smiled, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, genuine pride in my brother. I'm so happy for you, Marcus. You deserve this. I couldn't have done it without you, he said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Seriously, Sarah, you saved my life. But then, 5 weeks later, I got a call from my bank. Ms. Rodriguez, we're calling about some unusual activity on your checking account. There have been several large withdrawals that we wanted to verify with you. My blood went cold. What kind of withdrawals? 3 separate transactions over the past week, totaling $4,500. All ATM withdrawals using your debit card. I checked my wallet frantically, but my card was right there. Then I remembered, last week, when Marcus had taken me out for dinner, I'd let him pay with my card when his was supposedly having issues with the chip reader. He must have memorized my PIN when I wasn't looking. The room started spinning. I hung up the phone and immediately called Marcus, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. I drove to the address he'd given me for his new apartment, my heart hammering against my ribs. It was a rundown building in a rough part of Hollywood, nothing like the nice place he'd described. The landlord, a tired-looking man in his 60s, shook his head when I asked about Marcus. Never had any tenant by that name, he said. You sure you got the right address? I spent the next 2 days calling every number I had for him, driving to places I thought he might be, even going to the construction company he claimed to work for. They'd never heard of him. Finally, on Thursday evening, he called me back. Sarah, hey, he said, his voice different now, slurred and distant. What's up? What's up? I could barely control my voice. You stole from me, Marcus. You stole $4,500 from my account. There was silence on the other end, then a laugh that made my skin crawl. Oh, that? Yeah, I needed some cash for expenses. Expenses? What expenses? Where are you living? Where are you working? Because I checked, Marcus, and none of it was real. Look, Sarah, you're being dramatic. It's not that big a deal. Not that big a deal? I was screaming now, standing in my kitchen, tears streaming down my face. You lied to me, you stole from me, you made me believe you were clean when you were using the whole time. I am trying to get clean, he said, his voice suddenly angry. But it's hard, okay? It's really fucking hard, and I needed help. So you stole from me? I borrowed from you. There's a difference. Without asking, you stole my debit card information and took money that wasn't yours. The silence stretched between us, filled only by the sound of my ragged breathing and the distant hum of traffic outside my apartment. When Marcus finally spoke again, his voice had changed completely, taking on a tone I'd heard before but had hoped never to hear again. You know what, Sarah? I should have known you'd react like this. React like what? Like someone who's been robbed by her own brother? Like someone who doesn't actually want me to get better. His words hit me like a physical blow. Here I am, trying to get my life together, trying to get clean, and the first time I stumble, the first time I need a little extra help, you turn on me. I sank down onto my kitchen floor, the phone pressed against my ear, trying to process what I was hearing. Marcus, you didn't stumble. You lied to me for weeks. You stole from me. I was desperate, okay? Do you have any idea what it's like trying to get clean? Do you have any idea how hard it is? And instead of supporting me, instead of understanding that recovery isn't a straight line, you're sitting there judging me. The manipulation was so brazen, so obvious, and yet I could feel it working on me. That familiar guilt, the voice in my head that said maybe I wasn't doing enough, maybe I wasn't understanding enough. 3 years of codependency don't disappear overnight. I gave you $8,000, I said weakly. I gave you everything I had saved. And I'm grateful for that, I really am. But then when I needed a little more help, when I hit a rough patch, you couldn't be there for me. You know what my sponsor says? He says that family members who don't understand the recovery process can actually be obstacles to getting clean. I felt like I was drowning. This was the same brother who, just 6 weeks ago, had held my hands and promised on our parents' graves that he was done with drugs. The same brother who had taken me to dinner and told me I'd saved his life. Where did the money go, Marcus? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What does it matter? You're not going to believe me anyway. You've already decided I'm the bad guy here. I want to believe you. I've always wanted to believe you. But you make it impossible. No, you make it impossible. Every time I try to get clean, every time I make progress, you're there waiting for me to fail. It's like you want me to stay sick so you can feel better about yourself. The accusation was so cruel, so completely opposite to everything I'd done for him over the past 3 years, that I actually gasped. That's not true, isn't it? Think about it, Sarah. When I was using, you got to be the hero. Poor Sarah with her addict brother. Poor Sarah who sacrifices everything for her family. But now that I'm trying to get better, trying to be independent, you can't handle not being needed. I was crying so hard now that I could barely speak. I never wanted to be a hero. I just wanted my brother back. Well, maybe your brother doesn't want to be your project anymore. The line went quiet except for the sound of my sobbing. In the background on his end, I could hear voices, laughter, the kind of chaos that I recognized from his using days. Where are you? I asked. Does it matter? You've made it pretty clear that you don't want me in your life unless I'm playing by your rules. My rules? My rules are don't steal from me. My rules are don't lie to me. Those aren't unreasonable requests, Marcus. See? There you go again. Everything has to be on your terms. I can't make mistakes. I can't have bad days. I can't be human. I have to be your perfect recovery story or nothing at all. I pulled myself up from the kitchen floor and walked to my living room window, looking out at the lights of Los Angeles spreading out below me. Somewhere in this city was my brother, high and surrounded by people who didn't love him, didn't care if he lived or died. And here I was, in my empty apartment, crying over a relationship that maybe had been dead for longer than I wanted to admit. I don't need you to be perfect, I said quietly. I need you to be honest. I am being honest. I'm being more honest with you right now than I've been in years. You want honesty? Here it is. Your support comes with too many strings attached. Your love is conditional. You say you want me to get clean, but what you really want is for me to get clean in a way that makes you feel good about yourself. Each word was like a knife, designed to find the soft spots in my heart where guilt and self-doubt lived. And they were working. Despite everything, despite the lies and the theft, I was starting to wonder if maybe he was right. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe this was just part of the recovery process. But then I thought about the teller at the bank, the concern in her voice when she handed me that $8,000. I thought about all the extra shifts I'd worked, all the meals I'd skipped, all the things I'd denied myself to save that money. I thought about the construction company that had never heard of him, the apartment that didn't exist, the month of elaborate lies he'd constructed to make me believe he was clean. You know what, Marcus? I said, my voice suddenly steadier. You're right about one thing. I do want you to get clean in a specific way. I want you to get clean honestly. I want you to get clean without lying to me, without stealing from me, without manipulating me. Jesus, Sarah, I'm not done. The strength in my own voice surprised me. You want to talk about conditional love? Let's talk about it. For 3 years, I've loved you unconditionally. I've given you money when I couldn't afford it. I've picked you up from places I was scared to go to. I've lied to employers when you didn't show up for jobs I helped you get. I've cleaned you up when you were so high you couldn't remember your own name. I never asked you to do any of that. No, you didn't ask. You just expected it. You expected me to be there every time you fell down, and I was. But the moment I ask for basic honesty and respect in return, suddenly my love is conditional? I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line, could almost picture him pacing back and forth, working himself up to the next level of manipulation. You don't understand what it's like, he said, his voice taking on that wheedling tone I knew so well. You don't understand the pressure, the cravings, the way your brain works when you're trying to get clean. It's easy for you to sit there and judge me when you've never been through this. You're right, I haven't been through addiction. But I've been through 3 years of loving someone who is addicted, and that comes with its own kind of hell. I've been through 3 years of never knowing if you're alive or dead. 3 years of watching you destroy yourself and being powerless to stop it. 3 years of hoping and being disappointed, of trusting and being betrayed. So you're giving up on me. There it was, the final manipulation, the one designed to make me feel like the villain in this story. The one that said if I didn't continue to enable him, I was abandoning him. I'm not giving up on you, I said slowly, each word deliberate. I'm giving up on this version of our relationship. I'm giving up on being your safety net when you want to jump off cliffs. I'm giving up on funding your addiction while you tell me it's for recovery. Fine, he said, his voice suddenly cold. Fine, when I overdose, when I end up dead in some alley, just remember that you chose money over your brother's life. The threat hung in the air between us, designed to make me backtrack, to make me apologize, to make me open my wallet and my heart one more time. It was emotional terrorism, pure and simple, and I'd been a victim of it for years. If you overdose, I said, my voice steady despite the tears streaming down my face, it won't be because I chose money over your life. It will be because you chose drugs over mine. I hung up the phone before he could respond, then immediately turned it off and threw it across the room. I sank back down onto my kitchen floor and cried until I had nothing left. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. I changed my bank account, got a new debit card, and put a freeze on my credit. I started going to Al-Anon meetings, sitting in circles with other people who loved addicts, learning that I wasn't alone in this particular kind of heartbreak. The hardest part, said Janet, a woman in her 50s whose son had been addicted to heroin for 8 years, is accepting that love isn't enough. We think if we just love them hard enough, if we just sacrifice enough, if we just believe in them enough, we can save them. But we can't. I nodded, thinking about all the nights I'd stayed awake praying for Marcus, all the times I'd convinced myself that this time would be different, that this time he really meant it. So what do you do? Asked David, a man whose wife had been addicted to alcohol for 15 years. How do you keep loving someone when loving them is destroying you? You love them enough to stop enabling them, Janet replied. You love them enough to set boundaries. You love them enough to save yourself, because if you don't save yourself, you can't be there for them if they ever do get clean for real. Marcus called 17 times over the next month. I didn't answer. He left voicemails that ran the gamut from apologetic to angry to manipulative to threatening. I listened to each one once, then deleted it. He showed up at my apartment twice. The first time, I pretended not to be home. The second time, I answered the door but kept the chain latched. I'm getting help, he said through the crack in the door. Real help this time. I'm going into a program. He looked terrible. Thin again, hollow-eyed, hands shaking. Part of me wanted to believe him, to let him in, to make him coffee and listen to his promises. But I'd learned something in those Al-Anon meetings. Hope without boundaries is just another form of enabling. That's good, Marcus. I'm glad to hear that. I need some help with the program fees. It's not much, just a few $100s. And there it was. Even now, even after everything, he was still asking for money. I can't help you with that, I said quietly. Sarah, please, this is my last chance. If I don't get into this program, then you'll figure out another way, I interrupted. Because that's what people do when they really want to get clean. They figure it out. You're killing me, he said, his voice breaking. You're literally killing me. No, Marcus, I'm finally letting you save yourself. I closed the door gently and listened to him pound on it for 10 minutes before he finally left. That was 6 months ago. I haven't heard from him since, and I don't know if he's alive or dead, clean or using, housed or homeless. The not knowing is agony, but it's a different kind of agony than the constant cycle of hope and disappointment I'd been living in for 3 years. I'm back in nursing school now, using what was left of my savings plus a student loan to pay for it. I work part-time at the hospital and study when I'm not working. My life is smaller now, quieter, but it's mine. I'm not constantly checking my phone for calls from unknown numbers. I'm not constantly bracing myself for the next crisis. I'm not constantly wondering if today will be the day I get the call that he's dead. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I did the right thing. I wonder if somewhere out there, Marcus is thinking that his sister gave up on him, that she chose money over family, that she abandoned him when he needed her most. The guilt is still there, probably always will be. But then I remember what Janet said in one of our meetings. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. And more importantly, you can't save someone by drowning with them. I loved my brother enough to enable him for 3 years. Now I'm learning to love him enough to stop. Whether he ever gets clean or not, whether he ever comes back into my life or not, I know that I gave everything I had to give. The rest is up to him. Some days I still hope my phone will ring and it will be Marcus, really clean this time, ready to rebuild our relationship on a foundation of honesty and respect. Other days I hope it never rings at all, because I'm not sure I'm strong enough to go through this again. But every day, I wake up in my small apartment, I go to my classes or my job, and I live my life. Not the life I planned, not the life I dreamed of when we were kids, but a life that's mine. A life where I'm not responsible for saving anyone but myself. And maybe, for now, that's enough.